everyone, and welcome to Club 3, episode 41 of Rolling in the Isles, an FM20 British Isles Journeyman series with me, the United City FM. So we stayed at Derby County. So there are lots of reasons for that and lots of things to go through today. So buckle yourselves in. It's going to be a long one, I think. But we had a job interview at both Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United over the summer. We didn't get either job, but they appreciated the interview, so that was good. What I discovered ultimately, which I already knew, but where I was just pushing the boundaries and seeing what was out there, we haven't done enough at Derby County to warrant those jobs yet. And so we are now absolutely 100% focused on winning something with Derby County, whether it be the FA Cup or the League Cup, or even the league, possibly, if it lasts that long, before we do actually eventually move on to one of these bigger clubs and properly have an assault on the Champions League. So that's the trajectory. We are sticking around at Derby County. We're going to be here for a little while, I would think, because I need to build up my reputation and do something with Derby that warrants one of those big clubs. And I am absolutely delighted to still be here. This is a club still moving forward, and I think we've got so much more we can do with it. And I've done a lot in the summer to change a few bits of the club in terms of the playing staff to be able to move us forward. I think I'm really happy with the business that we've done, although just don't look at the overall bank balance of the club. It doesn't look particularly healthy. We've gone a little bit overboard, but the great thing about the Premier League is basically every season that kind of resets, doesn't it, really? Unless you do something really drastic, because of the amount of competition money that you get for finishing reasonably high up in the Premier League. So whilst I don't like that, whilst I would prefer it not to be there, it is. I made my decisions. We're going to go with it. And at some point we'll walk away from Derby. I am absolutely positive, having put them in so much more of a better position than we found them in when we arrived. So I don't think they can complain too much. Anyway, that's what I'm telling myself to be able to sleep easy at night whilst driving their finances into the ground a bit. So before we go on to the transfers for this particular summer transfer window that we've just had, you can see that, as would have it, Tottenham, one of the teams that we were interviewed for their job, is the first team that we get this season. And if we go into the fixture list, we can see it's been a little bit kinder to us this time round than it was last year. Remember those two blocks in last year's schedule where we played basically the top six all in a row? We got a couple of bits like that. Chelsea, Man United together, Arsenal shortly after, but that's not too bad. And then a little bit of the same later on in the season. They're a bit more spread out later on in the season. Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Man United, Arsenal. They're all fairly spread out. So I think we've got a reasonably good schedule this time round, which shouldn't trip us up too badly like that second half of last season did, where we hit those 6 games and basically lost all of them in a row, which was really disappointing. But anyway, so that should help us. I've also had a call from one of you guys to go and have a look at the profile page of the clubs that I've been at previously and just see where they're at the moment. So if you'll remember, we found Cobb Ramblers in the Irish First Division, and in our first season in 2019, they play in a calendar year, not over two calendar years in their division. We finished 6th, which wasn't too bad, having taken over them. And then the next season, far too early, we won the division, the Irish First Division, and got promoted to the Premier League. And that was an incredible season. It went so well, but it was a little bit early for us, and it showed in the following season when we went up. And if you remember, this was the season in which we lost 13 games in a row to start the season in the Irish Premier League, and eventually turned it round because the board were happy enough, because all they wanted us to do was fight against relegation for that season. So they were happy enough to leave me in control of it. And in the end, those 13 losses turned slightly. And the second half of the season, we went on such a good run. And on the last day of the season, stayed up in the Premier League, which was incredible. And that was basically my journey through the Irish leagues with Cobb Ramblers. I decided at that point, having been there for 3 seasons, that I didn't think there was much more I could do with this side. So then I moved on, and we moved into Connors Quay Nomads in Wales in the Welsh Premier League. And again, so we picked them up and finished reasonably well in the first season or so, and then won the Premier League in Wales with them. And you can see that they've been fairly consistent ever since, really. A couple of third places, a fourth. Last season, when it was 26-27, a couple of seasons ago, they weren't so good, were they? They finished in 8th, but last season they were back up to 2nd again. So I think we left them in a reasonably good position. They were able to continue roughly what they had done before that we arrived. So I think we didn't do them any harm whatsoever. And we won that Welsh Premier League in the middle of it. And that meant that we then decided to move on again, and that found our way to Derby County, which we've been at ever since. So we've been there for a little while now. This will be our 3rd season in the Premier League in England, and I think it's gone remarkably well. Last season, you remember, we finished in 8th position, which I thought was exceptional, having been predicted 17th. And this summer, we have done quite a lot of stuff. So let's go and have a look in our transfer history to see what we've been up to. So the likes of Portus have left the club, and Ida have left the club. McCowan left on a free. There were a couple of other minor players that left as well. But the couple there that were key were Portus and Ida. If you remember, we also had to replace a right-sided player as well. We bought Benza in for the second half of last season, but we needed to replace him as well. So those were the key positions then to strengthen, having lost a couple of players. And I think we've done it really well while spending quite a bit of money. So what did we do? Well, in terms of replacing Portus in the centre of defence, what I wanted, and the reason I got rid of Portus, well, I wanted to bring somebody in that could come into our first team and improve our already pretty good defence. Our defence last season was one of our key successful points. But I just felt that Story, if we go and find him, was getting on a little bit. And just beginning to lose some of his attributes in terms of what we need in the Premier League. A little bit less, too little on the heading and the marking, and the pace has gone a little bit. So that was the person that we decided I needed to get out of our first team. He still remains in the club as a reserve player, but this is the guy we bring in to replace him. And immediately you can see that all his key attributes are higher up, which is really positive. He's got some very good mentals, some very good physicals, and so I think we've got a really decent 21-year-old Brazilian in the club. We bought him in from Liverpool, and we paid a fairly hefty fee of 25 million, but as you see, that was dwarfed a little bit later on. But I think that's a good one. Jose Romario comes into the club to play central defence with Harwood Bellis, and we'll just see how he gets on. But I've been very happy with his pre-season form, and I think we've got a very good player here. So I'm more than happy for him to have been brought into the club. So that was the first bit of transfer business. Then the second bit is a name that you'll recognise. I had to figure out what to do with our strike force. If you remember last season, it was the thing that let us down the most. We never had a striker that got going. Loku Doku, who plays out wide left for us, he was our top goal scorer for the season, I seem to recall. So we needed to do something about that. And what I decided to do was a bit of a gamble, really, in pretty much all 3 striking spots. So Audran stays on loan, because I think that if we go and have a look at what he offers us, whilst he wasn't particularly prolific last season, he's 20 years old, so he's still improving. And I think his attributes are reasonably good. And I think as a third choice in our squad, I don't think we were going to find much better. He was happy to stay on loan. PSG were happy for him to stay on loan, so we kept him. And he's still got a potential 5-star ability. So if we can get some more game time out of him, maybe we can improve him, and who knows what the future will hold for him. So that's the reason that we've kept him. They were happy to keep it for us to keep him on loan. He was happy, and I think his attributes as a third choice striker are pretty decent. So that was the first decision that we made. The second decision was We let Monterese go back to his club in terms of Inter Milan having loaned him last season, but he was a player that frustrated me a lot. And because I think his attributes, again, demonstrate that he's got a very, very good potential ability here. There's a lot about him. And when I was hunting around for strikers, there weren't many that I found that were much better than what this guy was. And when I investigated him, having built up a relationship with him last season, having him on loan, and he was happy with our relationship, I put in a sort of a bit of a cheeky 17.5 million bid, not expecting them to do much with it, because he was rated around that sort of area himself. And I thought, well, they won't go for it. But they did. They accepted the bid, and obviously he just wasn't in their plans. And as a 20-year-old, this is our second striker for this season, our reserves striker, and he's going to get plenty of game time again, you would hope. And if he does, again, the potential ability is there. He was frustrating last season. He should have done better, absolutely. It is a gamble to keep these guys in, but we had to make a decision as to how our strike force would look. And I think this was fairly good business if we can get some goals out of him. And I think we can. I have faith in this guy. I think he'll come good for us in the end. So the one thing that we did eventually do was get rid of Adam Ida. And you can see why, really. He was 27 years old, so in his peak, really. But for a Premier League striker, he just didn't have enough about him. His mentals are not strong enough. He's got reasonable finishing and composure, a bit of decent pace. But other than that, I think he was a little bit of a weak player to base an attack round in the Premier League. So that was the decision to move him on in the end. And we got a reasonable fee for him. I think, anything up to 8.75, depending on some stuff, is reasonable for what we let go. So we went hunting for our number one striking option. And there were a few out there. We did look at a few different strikers. In the end, I decided that it was worth paying the money for the guy that I bought in, and it's this guy, Pauletta, not sure, but we'll figure that as we go. But there were a number of other options that were slightly cheaper. There absolutely were, but I went for this guy, and I went for this guy because of look at his all-round attributes. Look at the fact that he can get involved in the play, and he's got stamina to keep going in terms of the different styles of play that we have. He's got some reasonably good mentals, some very good physicals. And then his key attributes. A little bit more composure would be great, absolutely. But decent finishing, decent free kick taking, long shots. And I think there's a really good player. Off the ball is decent. Pace is good. Acceleration is good. Anticipation is really key. And I think we might have a decent striker on our hands here. And again, at the age of 20. So our three strikers for this season are quite young. And I've got a lot of potential in them. And you can see that he's currently, unfortunately, away at the Olympic Games. So we're not going to see him just yet. He and Ivan, one of our central midfielders, are both at the Olympic Games, so they're out for the very beginning of the season, which is a little bit disappointing, but it gives the likes of Monterese a chance to nail down an opportunity and try and get some goals for us early in the season. So those three are the guys that we've kept in the club for our striking options. I'm really happy with them in the sense of they are all a gamble. The two that we had previously are both gambles because they haven't quite performed. But I think they can. I think there's something in there. And the third, being Pauletta, is a really big gamble just because of the fee. It wasn't 60 million up front. It was like 30 and 30, I seem to remember. 30 up front and 30 in instalments. But it is a very, very big fee for us. But I thought it was worth the gamble because we have to find a way to get more goals out of this team, because last season defensively we were superb, but we were not very good in front of goal. So that's what we've decided to do about it, and it's a gamble, but I'm pretty happy with it. And then the last two, there's a couple of interesting ones here. So the first one, you may remember that when we came into the club in the first instance here at Derby County, Adam Daniels was sold from under me by the board. And he went off to Newcastle for 17, 18 million, something like that. And I noticed over the summer that he was unsettled and not particularly happy. Now, whilst he hasn't got everything that you would want, this is neither our first or second choice down this left wing. This is a utility squad player that's come in down that left wing who can play wide right as well for us, and so covers both. But we've still got Loku Doku down the left, and we've still got Gouvet that's gone back to play on the left because we've changed our right-hand side options as well. And Daniels is basically third choice in both left and right side of our wing play. And will come in and cover those positions as when we need him, but isn't expected to play too much. And I think for a third choice player down both those sides, one, he's played in the club before, and two, I think his attributes are reasonable for it. So he comes back, and for somebody that we sold for about £17.5 million, we bought him back for 4.7. So I think that's pretty good going, and he'll come and play his part. And so we had one last position that we needed to change, and that was our right-sided option. You remember we've got Noel down the right side, who's an absolute superstar for us. We then sold McCowan over the summer. We sold Scott last year, that was the backup to him. We had Mbenza on loan that was never going to stay on for more than the second half of last season. So we had to find another option down that right-hand side. Now, obviously, Daniels can play down there. Gouvet can play down there as well, but primarily those two are left-sided players. So we went and found this guy on loan at Man City, and I'm absolutely stunned that they let him come to us on loan, but they have. And so Marius Langer, with some pretty good attributes, is now our reserve right-sided winger and plays on that central midfield line in our asymmetric formation as well. Now, what you can see, again, he's got some gaps. I'd like a little bit more pace. He's got a few gaps in his mental attributes. But the key attributes for the position that we want him to play in, acceleration is good, pace is reasonable, technique is good, dribbling is good, crossing is good. So there's lots of positivity about playing him down that right-hand side. And I think he's going to be a really, really good backup option for us off the bench for us when Noel is unable to play for whatever reason. So I think we've done really well in this transfer window whilst paying absolutely an awful lot of money for us. And I think that there are a few gambles in there, but gambles that I was absolutely willing to take. So overall, I'm happy with the balance of the squad. I think it's improved a lot since last season. Having that extra option down the right-hand side is a real positivity. And everybody else is pretty much in the club and happy to be here currently. We've got a couple of wanted players, but that's okay. They can be wanted all they like. I don't have to sell them, do I? And I think we are in a decent position for this particular season. So Pauletta and Ivan, both away at the Olympics. Audrun is also away at the Olympics. So they're not going to be back for a little while. I think we've got a few more days before those lot are back. So they're going to miss the Tottenham game specifically, and then we'll see what their fitness is like for the rest of the early part of the season. So today is against Tottenham. It's an early chance to play one of the top six. And now we have to talk a little bit about how we're going to approach this season. And what I've said in the comments section for a couple of videos to a couple of people over the last couple of days is I think we need a change of attitude slightly in terms of how we set out stuff. Now, away from home against the big six clubs, we are probably going to go more defensive than anything and work on the counter-attack like we did before in this setup here. A deep-lying 4-2-3-1 using the fluid counter-attacking style. That is still going to be away from home what we do against the big six. But at home against the big six, I'd like to start with the controlled possession and our asymmetric style. Some don't like the asymmetric style. I've heard some of the comments about that. That's fine. But this is what got us into 8th position last season. And I think with a couple of better players in it, especially Pauletta up top, I think we can do even better potentially, and I quite like this setup. So we're still going to use it until it causes us a problem, obviously, then we won't. But I'd like to be a little bit more forward thinking this season, and one of those things that we can do is that when we play anybody at home that's from the top 6, we're going to play this asymmetric controlled possession style and try and act a little bit like we are 8th in the Premier League from last season and not a promoted club anymore. We've now cemented ourselves in the Premier League. We had a mid-table finish first season in like 12th, whatever it was, and last season finished in 8th. And we now need to move the club forward again. And doing so means a slight change in attitude. And so we are going to try and take the game to the opposition a little bit. So when we come up against the top 6 at home, we're going to play the controlled possession. And some of the other teams that we play, some of the lesser teams, for whether we're at home or away, we might play the Gegenpress in the 4-2-3-1, more advanced version of the 4-2-3-1. So we're going to be a little bit more positive about our chances this season, is my hope. That depends on all sorts of things. What our form is like, what the club's form is like that we're playing, what our player situation is like in terms of who's available to us on any given day, all sorts of things. But in general, it's about time for us to start thinking of us as an 8th position club in the Premier League, not a promoted club. So that's my thought for this coming season. Let me know what you think in the comments below, how you would approach this. So because we're playing Tottenham away from home in our first game, we're going to switch it to that more defensive option and change out the players that are at the Olympics. Pauletta comes out, Monterese comes in, Ivan comes out, May comes in. We can't have Pauletta on the bench either, so Martinez will cover that position for us today, even though it's not his natural one particularly. But all of that means that away from home against Tottenham, first game in the Premier League season, we go in with our slightly defensive, fluid attacking, counter-attacking system. And it means that Bazunu's in goal, Bogle at right back, Target at left back, Romario and Harwood Bellis in central defence, with Joku, Vera and Ramsey in central midfield, Knoll on the right, Lokudoku on the left and Monterese up top, with Story, Cooper, May, Silas, Langer, Guive and Martinez on the bench. So let's get into today's game and see what happens. So as an opening day of the season, we've just gone with give these fans a performance to cheer for. Tottenham have come with a 4-4-2, which is interesting. We'll see how that matches up to our slightly defensive structure in terms of the way that we can hold them out. But, you know, this is going to be a tricky game nonetheless. Whatever happens today, Tottenham are a great side. And if you remember, we struggled against the London clubs last season, whoever we came up against, pretty much right the way through the season, even including some of the slightly lesser London clubs. So this is going to be challenging. And it is Tottenham down the right-hand side with the first highlight. But we do get it cleared partially by Target. Tottenham win the second ball, though, the loose ball, should I say, in their defensive unit, who's pushed right up into our half. So they're playing quite a high line at that point. And again, they go over the top down the left-hand side this time, get back into the penalty box, get a chance for a cross-in, and there's an early shot, and we go down early, 14 minutes in, and we've had no real chance to get on the ball, have we? And our defensive structure wasn't good enough. Down those wide areas, they managed to ride the challenges or lack of from the fullback, get themselves into the penalty box. It was a good whipped cross into that near post, and Lopez wrapped his foot round it at the near post and put it past the goalkeeper for an early lead. It's a little bit disappointing, isn't it? It feels like we've never quite got going so far. And there's a loose ball by Bogle, but Knoll wins the ball, strides into the penalty box and almost pulls off a great shot. But the goalkeeper parries it and they get it cleared just about. But there's the benefit of having Knoll down that right-hand side. He's a really good player. Bogle with the loose ball, we win it back through Knoll. He gets into the box, has a decent shot. And at least we've shown that we can actually do something and get through their defence to have a shot at goal. But so far in this first half, it's a little bit lacking in what we want it really to be. But we are against one of those really big sides. And again, it's Knoll and Bogle down the right-hand side, working an opportunity back into Joku, over the top from Monterese, and he puts it in the back of the net for 1-1. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, we get an opportunity over the top from Joku, and it's been given offside. Oh, frustrating. I thought, you know, that is as close as you can get it. Look at that line. It's barely visible, but millimetres offside, and Monterese is unlucky. First opportunity for him, puts it in the back of the net, but it's taken away from him. And we go through to half-time. It's a little bit unfortunate, I think. We had a reasonable amount of possession for an away game against one of the big sides, but those shots at goal, they've had 11, we've only had 2, and that's where the problem lies. We haven't been able to create enough chances. So what we're going to do about it? Well, that's always the big question, isn't it? So we're going to have to passionately say it's time for everyone to dig in. I know you can do better. And we are going to do what we said we were going to do. We are going to be a little bit more positive about our chances this season, having finished 8th in the Premier League last season. So we are going to change it in this second half back to our asymmetric controlled possession and see if we can work that any better moving into the second half. And then we're all going to go in with a shout and get creative and just see if that helps. And Tottenham, oh, please not. 2 minutes in, a long free kick from miles away. And it's a Tottenham head that gets on the end of it. And just as we're coming out for the second half to see if we can find a way to get into this game, they take a 2-0 lead. I'm not sure what we do against these London clubs. It feels like whatever choices we make is going to be the wrong choice. But there we go. We've got to carry on. So we're staying in the same structure that we are in our control possession. Again with a loose pass in midfield. This has not been a good start. It's unfortunate to have played one of these big guys, it feels like, on the opening day, and they dragged their shot wide on that occasion. It's going to be a bit of a damp end to this episode if we can't do something here. I thought we'd build up the club and talked about a good transfer window, and we've got lots of positivity. And yes, we're missing a couple of key players away at the Olympic Games, which is difficult. But even so, you'd hope that we'd perform slightly better in the first opening game of the season. Anyway, let's go and see what we can do about it, because we've got 20 minutes left of the game and we've got a couple of problems to sort out. Loku Doku's just picked up a knock, so he's going to come out of the game. Guive goes on. And then we got Ramsey in that attacking midfield role, who's not particularly performing particularly well, and neither is Monterese, and we don't have the attacker on the bench for Monterese. He's also got a yellow card. I am going to stick to type though. We're going to take Ramsey off and put Martinez on in his position. We're going to have to leave Monterese there for now, and we're going to have to find somewhere else that we can improve this setup. Romario, the new central defender at the back, potentially we should have brought him in a slightly different way and left Story there to start the season and build up some confidence, but you live and learn, I guess. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to bring Cooper on down that left hand side and take Target off instead, and just give us some extra legs down that left hand side, working in partnership with Guive. They play a lot together, so hopefully that will work down the left hand side. And then for that last 15 minutes, we're going to have to change it up and go attacking. We're going to put the attacking option on the Gegenpress and just see if we can find a route through at all and really challenge this Tottenham side to see the game out. And unfortunately it's them with another opportunity off a set piece. And we've struggled with set pieces today a little bit. We partially get it cleared and then they blast a shot over the top of the crossbar, and we sigh a bit of a sigh of relief there, really. It was all down to whether Tottenham could do something or not, and on that occasion they didn't, and we limp to the end of the game, really. And it's been a bit of a struggle for an opening day game away from home against one of the top 6. You can see they've had 25 shots at goal, 10 on target. We've had 3 on goal and 2 on target. Had reasonable possession, but we just weren't able to do anything with it. And we played all 3 of our formations, our structures of play, should I say, and formations, and none of them seemed to work at the wrong points in the game, probably. Lots of managerial errors in there, probably, but those are the things that happen occasionally. And without our number 1 striker, we really built our squad around having a decent striker up top this season. Without him for the first game, it was a little bit unfortunate, wasn't it, really, that we didn't quite manage to take any of the chances that we did create, even though there were few and far between. Now, the assistant manager wants to tell the boys that they did well and their efforts were excellent. And their efforts might have been good, but they weren't good enough. And so I'm not going to quite do that. Calmly, I'm going to say, unlucky boys, it wasn't your day today. And just leave them with not too much of a bad vibe, but just to tell them that, we do need to work harder somehow. Unfortunately, that puts us down the bottom of the table roughly for the first day of the season, but that's okay. That will change quick enough once we play a few other sides and get a few goals in us, hopefully. So Lokudoku's only injured for a day or so, which is also positive, so he's not going to be out of the side much. Romario, bit of a challenging debut for him. Maybe we should have gone with the other guy first in story just for that first game. Tactical blunder ends unbeaten run. Okay, they think I messed up. I probably did. The fans were left questioning the manager's tactics after they were defeated. Well, okay, fair enough. We went through as much as we could the different styles. I always said that we'd start defensively against the top six and see where it took us, but especially away from home, and it didn't work today. But that's Tottenham for you. They're a good side, and that's why they were in the top six and we weren't last season. So there you go. That's the way it works. We've got a good run coming up, though. We've got the likes of West Ham, Sheffield United, Bournemouth, and we'll come back and play the Chelsea game next. In the early part of September. So give me a couple of games to get going. We'll play an early round of the FA Cup. I'll update you on those when we come back for the next episode against Chelsea. And by then, we'll have had our full squad back from the Olympics, those 3 players, and that will give us more options and more balance in and around our team, which will be great. So there you go. That's what's coming up. Chelsea next episode. Thanks for joining me today, though. Bit of a long-winded one because we had so many things to get through, but I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Join my United City community. All the more the merrier from my point of view. So yeah, subscribe and join us as we move forward. If you have enjoyed this particular episode, I'd love you to click that like button for me. It helps me get seen by lots of other people. Helps me move up in the YouTube algorithms on search functions and stuff. So if you could click that for me, that would be amazing. Really appreciate that. But until next time, take care of yourselves. I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.